Hello, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you have a question or would like to schedule an appointment with me, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com. The topic of this video is mutual mommy and daddy issues of narcissists, borderlines, and codependents. If you've been in a relationship with a narcissist, borderline, or psychopath, there have probably been times when it seemed like they were projecting a parental role onto you. At a very basic level, yes, narcissists and borderlines do this. However, there's much more to it beyond the superficial observations of their childish behaviors and attitudes. Narcissists, borderlines, histrionics, and psychopaths are chronically emotionally immature. You're dealing with someone who is typically somewhere between a troubled toddler or a troubled teenager in terms of emotional and psychological maturity. In some cases, the damage is pre-verbal and likely goes back to attachment disturbances in infancy. Clients who share actual children, that is, children under the age of 18, with narcissistic, borderline, or sociopathic spouses have watched their kids mature and surpass their adult partners or exes in terms of emotional and moral development. If you're doing a good enough job as a parent, you'll see this happen, and it's remarkable to witness. When you have a 10-year-old who knows that it's wrong to lie, but their narcissistic or borderline mother or father doesn't, I mean, that's really something. And that is, of course, if your narcissistic or borderline ex hasn't alienated your children from you. If you began the relationship wanting an equal partner, in other words, a functional adult rather than someone who play acts being a grown-up when love bombing or practicing image management, you'll likely eventually resent the parental role in which your disordered spouse thrusts you. Or maybe you're the type who likes the whole mommy-daddy-child dynamic in an intimate relationship, in which case, keep riding the dysfunction junction merry-go-round because I can't help you. In many cases, the targets of narcissists and other disordered abusers volunteer for this thankless position, hoping things will magically change someday. This is especially true of people who have codependency issues. Common rationalizations include, she'll grow out of it once she becomes a mother. God, no, they don't. There's a reason why we have public service announcements about children having children, and it's not a good idea. I'm getting off the soapbox now. Other common rationalizations are, he had such a tough childhood. She just has low self-esteem. She'll become more secure once she learns to trust me and experiences love. All of his exes were just abusive. He just needed to be with someone who really appreciates him. She doesn't mean the stuff she says when she's angry. That was the alcohol talking. She's just stressed about the wedding. She'll feel more secure once I propose. I just need to be more patient, more loving, make more money, take on even more financial responsibility, and not have appropriate emotional responses to being abused, and then she or he will treat me better, which is essentially what it all comes down to. Many codependents are aware of the disordered person's issues going into the relationship. However, they believe they can help, rescue, save, or love the narcissist, borderline, or psychopath into becoming an emotionally mature adult who is capable of reciprocating love, kindness, generosity, and respect. This doesn't happen. Even with treatment, and some improvements can be made, at least in DBT with borderline disordered individuals, but they don't ever fully get cured. Basically, you'll have just as much success trying to change a rattlesnake into a golden retriever. That is, if you're looking for an emotionally mature partner. Not too long ago, a man emailed to inquire about couples counseling with his wife, whom he believes is likely a narcissist. He explained he was looking for a therapist to, and I quote, convince his wife to be a good person. I explained that neither counseling nor life work that way. He didn't want to hear it. If a 40-something-year-old woman or man doesn't understand that it's not okay to be an abusive creep, and doesn't care how their behavior impacts those closest to them, there's nothing I nor anyone else can do about it. I'm a psychologist, not a magician. The harsh reality is that you have some choices to make. Tough, painful choices for codependent and trauma-bonded individuals. Namely, do you want to choose self-respect or abuse? Do you end the relationship or accept the disordered person for who they are, or what some personality disorder apologist therapists refer to as practicing radical acceptance? Is everyone who becomes involved with a narcissist, psychopath, or borderline codependent? No. Not all men and women who marry or date narcissists and other disordered predators are codependent. Sometimes these individuals and the narcissists, the borderlines, and other bullies can fool people with good enough boundaries who are overall emotionally healthy. They can keep that false self mask on long enough to establish a bond. Somebody who did not grow up to become codependent because of dysfunctional families of origin can get together with these types. People who aren't codependent, as I said, which begins in childhood, can become trauma bonded. It's I think of it as a different spin on a current political trope, which is not all trauma bonded people are codependent, but if you're codependent, you probably have trauma bond relationships. Some characterologically disordered individuals are high functioning. That doesn't mean they're not every bit as toxic as their low functioning counterparts. That would be the obvious human train wrecks. It just means they're better able to wear the mask of normalcy for longer periods of time when it suits them. For example, when they're seeking social approval or are in the early love bombing or idealization stage of a relationship. Think of Jekyll and Hyde. Non-codependent people may get involved with the personality disordered, but they're usually much quicker to end the relationship and less likely to agonize about ending it once the narcissist removes her or his human suit and reveals the alien lizard creature that lurks within. Here's the difference. For example, let's call him Healthy Hal. I stopped seeing that woman I met on Tinder. She interrogated me about my female friends on Facebook and wanted to know why I hadn't changed my relationship status yet on our second date. Psycho. Versus codependent Connie. He says he doesn't want a committed relationship, but I think he's just afraid of intimacy because he's been burned so many times. I try not to take it personally when he says he'll call and doesn't, or shows up at my place at 2 a.m. after a night of drinking. He just doesn't know what it's like to be with a woman who really loves him. He'll change. No, he won't. No, they don't. Healthy people don't tolerate abuse and call it love. Healthy people don't want to have relationships with children in adult bodies. Healthy people don't tolerate being manipulated and exploited and think it's okay or normal. Healthy people don't stay in relationships out of fear, obligation, and guilt. But codependent and trauma-bonded people do. So what's going on in the codependent personality disordered pairing? Mutual mommy and daddy issues. Perhaps there are some codependents and personality disordered individuals who don't have mommy and daddy issues, but for simplicity's sake, let's agree that they're the exception and not the rule. Narcissists and borderlines typically couple with codependents or other disordered individuals and then tend to raise new generations of narcissists, borderline sociopaths, and codependents. The children of narcissists, borderlines, and psychopaths who grow up to be codependent are usually parentified as kids. Parentification is a role reversal between parent and child in which the child becomes the emotional caretaker of the parent or acts as the caretaker of other siblings instead of the parent. Parentified children can be used as a surrogate spouse, even including co-sleeping with mom or dad as late as adolescence. It's not healthy, if you're wondering. And parentified kids become their parents' confidant, therapist, mediator, or peacekeeper between the parents. A parentified child may be the projected ego ideal for the parent. For example, mothers who enter young daughters in beauty pageants, parents who are obsessed with their kids being star athletes, cheerleaders, models, actors, etc., in which the narcissistic or borderline parent vicariously hopes to achieve through the child what they weren't capable of achieving for themselves, regardless of whether or not the child has the aptitude or interest in these pursuits. If the parentified child doesn't perform the way the parent wants, the parent withholds love, approval, and acceptance. The child is rewarded or avoids punishment by participating in their parentification, and in some cases, emotional and physical incest. And just in case it isn't clear, the parentification of children is a form of child abuse. The parent is robbing the child of healthy childhood development. Parentified child, and I'm going to emphasize this. The parentified child receives love for participating in their own abuse. The child gets love for participating in their own abuse. They receive love for taking on adult responsibilities and not showing anger, resentment, or hurt while being abused and after being abused. Although some especially abusive parents enjoy seeing their children's hurt and terror, but the child better not show anger or hurt afterwards or in any way hold their sick parent accountable. If you were parentified as a child and became a codependent adult, you probably learned very early in life that your emotional needs and overall well-being are secondary, or were secondary at best, to your parents. In extreme cases, I've asked clients, so what would make you happy? And they don't know beyond finding ways to make their abusive, narcissist, borderline, or psychopathic partner happy and avoiding disappointing or making them angry, which are all impossible tasks, by the way. Codependents often confuse abuse and exploitation with love. If you grew up making excuses for your parents, it's not surprising that you do the same for abusive adult spouses, boyfriends, and girlfriends. Codependents are the people-pleasing, rescuing, nice guy, nice gal, professional caregiver types who are the first to offer help, but rarely, if ever, ask for help or support for themselves. In other words, you're perfect targets for narcissists, borderline psychopaths, and other abusive predators. What are narcissists, borderlines, and psychopaths seeking in a relationship? They aren't looking for a parent in the true sense of the word. They don't want a loving, nurturing adult who implements rules, structures, boundaries, and consequences. They're looking for a parentified child to be their parent, a servant, an enabler, an emotional wet nurse, a housekeeper, a cook, a breadwinner, an emotional or physical punching bag, a day laborer, a scapegoat, and a personal assistant who has neither power nor a voice in the relationship. These perpetual toddlers, teens, and tweens want the perfect mommy or daddy who will love them unconditionally, even when they're cruel, selfish, self-absorbed, irrational, dishonest, unfaithful, financially irresponsible, abusive, violent, or tries to have you arrested for telling them no or wanting a divorce. And by the way, telling a narcissist or a borderline female in particular no, or telling them you want a divorce, is what they refer to as domestic violence. Borderlines, narcissists, and psychopaths experience boundaries, accountability, and consequences as control and abuse. So, in order for them to feel secure in the relationship, you have to tolerate their abuse, and even that isn't enough. They want a mommy or daddy to adore them all the time and give them never-ending attention, even when they're ignoring mommy or daddy. These individuals also want mommy or daddy to let them call the shots. In other words, they want a parent to let them, the child, be in charge of everything. Finances, reality, the actual children. Alternately, if they don't want to control the money or the kids, they also don't want any responsibility in terms of living within the family budget, educating the children, or helping them to develop into healthy adults. You're supposed to take care of everything, so they don't have to do anything. Just the fun stuff. I've seen both extremes. The real sick stuff is when they experience sibling rivalry with their children, or pets for that matter. If you're a codependent, You're most likely attracted to narcissistic, borderline, and sociopathic adult partners because of their similarities to your parents. In the love bombing or idealization stage, you get what you think is the opposite of what you experienced as a child: unconditional love, adoration, acceptance. For example, you sacrificed your well-being, identity, individuality, childhood, and wants and needs for mommy or daddy's ego, demands, and pathology. And along comes the love-bombing narcissist or borderline who puts you up on a pedestal and thinks everything about you is amazing. Wow, that feels great. Many of my clients state, she or he seemed too good to be true in the beginning of the relationship. It felt like too much too soon. But they wanted to believe so very badly and ignored their gut instincts and common sense. You may be quite clear that you don't want an adult relationship with someone who's like your borderline dad or narcissistic mom. Your toxic parents didn't love bomb you, so why does it happen in the adult relationship iterations? Narcissistic or borderline parents don't have to love bomb their kids. Moms and dads have absolute power and control over their children from the day we're born. They don't have to seduce children because children are wired to trust their parents and see them as godlike. Exceptions to this are when a narcissistic or borderline parent love bombs a kid to triangulate them with the other parent or is running an alienation campaign for custody reasons. Once you're hooked and the narcissist mask falls away, you are, once again, face to face with your respective childhood monster. Parentified children may caretake their parents, but parentified children are not in control. Parentified children have no power. They have the illusion of power. For example, if I can make mommy, daddy happy, do everything right, and never disappoint or make them angry, then they'll love me. This isn't power. It's magical thinking and a comforting lie parentified children and other abused children tell themselves. And if you're codependent, it's likely the same lie you tell yourself about your narcissistic or borderline partner. Disordered spouses expect their partners to sacrifice their own well-being and dance attendance on them. They behave like children and demand to be indulged like spoiled children. Codependents comply, hoping to go back to the idealization stage or to avoid their anger, emotional withdrawal, or silent treatment. You may clean up the narcissist messes, subsidize the psychopath schemes, and soothe the borderline's nonstop dysregulating emotions, but you're not in control, and you have no power. The person who is walking on the eggshells has no power. You get your power back by stopping walking on eggshells. The narcissist, borderline, and psychopath will never grow up, but you can. And you do it by taking back your personal power. Hint, hint, hint. That involves boundaries, self-care, and doing the grief work. If your parents have characterological pathology, that is where your grief work begins. If you don't heal those original wounds and do the grief work of childhood, you are likely to continue to repeat the self-destructive pattern of relationships with disordered partners. If you can give yourself what your mom and dad didn't, you'll no longer seek it from disordered mates who are no more capable of giving that to you than your dysfunctional parents were. Again, I'm Dr. Tara Palmatier of shrinkformen.com. If you'd like to schedule an appointment or ask a question, you can reach me at shrinkformen@gmail.com.